In this video I'm going to have a little look at setting up subdivision surfaces in DAZ Studio and Poser 10. This is something I've only just really started to explore, so it's mostly for my reference. I'm no expert on it. I followed this video by Peter, it's very good, and made this model in Modo, and it looks like this, and this is in its subdivision mode. So you can see the mesh, but you can also see it looks really nice and smooth. Now if I export this and bring it into Wings 3D, which takes a little while to load, you can see that it looks like this, which is rather angular. If I hit the tab key, the geometry looks okay, but it's not very smoothed out as the Modo one was. So to get this into a smooth form, I would have to hit the S key a couple of times to get the geometry looking really nice, as it does here. But then the model's weight, the amount of memory it's going to take up, will have gone up considerably because I've added a lot of extra geometry. Now if I take, just go back, Control Alt Z, the model as it was exported and load it into DAZ Studio, well, we'll do that now. File, Import. So this is my model. I just accept these options. Oh, it's rather small, so select it and enlarge its scale. Come on. Is it going to appear? Just going to make it a bit bigger so I can see what I'm doing with it. Okay, so here's what it looks like in DAZ Studio. You can see it looks rather angular, and it's not been automatically subdivided. But DAZ Studio does support this automated subdivision process. So to enable that, you need to have the thing selected, and then go to Edit, Object is here, and then Geometry, and then Convert to Sub D, and then you can adjust the mesh resolution here and the way it's subdivided. So if I take it up to like 3 subdivisions, that looks pretty good. If I now go over to the Octane, because I've got the plugin that allows me to view this in Octane, it has also come across in its subdivided form, so that process has been handled, which is nice. If it had already got the data across there, if supposing I'd opened the viewport before that, you'd have to reload it to get the new data from it, but that's pretty good that it's been able to pass that across. Now if I now bridge this to Bryce, right, this is a risky process, but let's give it a go. So I go File and Send to Bryce. Sometimes going from DAZ Studio without opening Bryce first can cause it to crash, and sometimes it succeeds, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, it's come across okay, but you can see that it's not got the extra geometry data that it needs to make it look nice and smooth. So to achieve that, you'd have to file and export this object. So we'll call this test export and save that. Accept. Right, I'll get rid of this one now. And now if I import this object back, it should have frozen or crystallized the additional data. I can't see where it is now. It's come out quite large. These things happen. I probably should have adjusted my scale, but it should now have the additional points that will have been created due to export. Oh dear me. I'll just send it to Bryce and see what happens. I can always I need to select it and send to Bryce. So hopefully now the subdivisions will have been done, and when I go to Bryce, here we go, it has come out rather large. I can just scale that down, can't I? Okay, to approximately the same size, and then I'll go back in, move the camera in. That's what I was doing. Okay, move it across and have a look. So you can see that we've been able to automate the subdivide process in DAZ Studio, export it, bring it back in. It's now got the extra complexity in the mesh, would be the equivalent of smoothing this down and exporting it. So let us just hide that for a moment and import the exported one from DAZ Studio. See what that mesh looks like, see what job it's done of it. Okay, it's rather large, so I need to scale that down again. So I'll scale uniform. Oops, turned it inside out. I can't actually see it in the viewport at the moment, that's the problem. Okay, I'll bring it down, move along the y-axis So it's in my viewport, so it's near the origin. And then zoom back in, so you can see the subdivision process has added quite a lot of extra geometry, so that you're not saving once it's got all this extra geometry, but that's a way of getting a model that was intended for subdivision into Bryce, because like a lot of the figures, if you have a subdivided surface on one of the DAZ Studio figures and use the bridge, it doesn't freeze the additional geometry into the mesh so that Bryce can render the figure at the same resolution it renders in DAZ Studio. So that's something to experiment with further. This is just an introduction to this idea. So let's move over to Poser. So File, Import, and let's get our wavefront object. OK that, because I don't really know what it means. Bring in our mesh, so you can see now. How do we move this? I think I can just pick it up and move it. So many programs, so many options to rotate and move things, it gets confusing. So this, you can see, is looking quite crude, but if we go to, and this may seem odd, select it, Figure and Skinning Method, and move it to Poser Unimesh, and then you go to the Properties, then we have the option here to set the subdivision level. So that's where that's hidden in Poser 10. That's just the version I've got here. So that is the way that I have uncovered so far of taking a model intended for this form of surface subdivision. So you model it with the intention that it's going to be processed in the program, so you can have lightweight meshes that represent nice curvy geometry. Depending how the geometry is supported, will give you sharp edges or curves, but that's getting a little bit into another area there. The way to set them up in DAZ Studio, bearing in mind you need maybe to set your import and export scales correctly, as I didn't consider that, and Poser 10. And if you're going to set it up for Bryce, you need to either smooth your geometry down a few levels in your modeling application, in this case Modo, or in another modeling application, in this case Wings 3D. So you could do that. You could get the same effect by just smoothing this one down to the same level. You get the same results more or less, because the smoothing algorithms are quite similar. And then you can export it and render it nicely in whatever render application you choose. And if you're using Octane, here we go, Octane, I can't really see what I'm doing there in that view, and you've not got the subdivision, but you've set the subdivision up in DAZ, then reload it and it'll get the new data for the mesh. Okay then, that's as much as I know about the topic so far. So I hope you found that interesting and useful, and if not, at least I'll be able to check myself and find out where these controls are, because digging through these menus can be a bit baffling, and the places in which the options are saved, like down here in Object Geometry Sub D for DAZ Studio, or in the case of Figure and Skinning Method Poser Unimesh, is not particularly obvious, at least it wasn't to me. So cheers now.